Hi, this is the Humanist Foundation. We have a special guest today. Dr. David Orenstein is a full professor of anthropology at Medgar Evers College of the City University of New York. He's the author of 3 books. 2015, Godless, Grace, How Nonbelievers Are Making the World Safer, Richer and Kinder. Second book is Darwin Apostles, 2019. And we have the third one is Evolution, book for children, titled A Tale of Many Trees, was published in 2024.
Correct. Thank you.
Yeah. Primatologist by early training. He has written for national and international freethinker and science publications. Dr. Orenstein is a human rights activist representing American Humanist Association at the United Nations formally.
Yes.
Hi, Mr. David.
Hi.
Hi. We would like to ask you some questions. We have here Vincent Downing too as well, a board of director of Brooklyn Society for Ethical Culture. And we're going to start with the question. What is anthropology?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a great meta question to start with. Anthropology can be infinitesimally small in its view, or it can be exquisitely large, meaning that you can look at the anthropology of something. It can be language, it could be human existence, it can be global existence of the planet, different species, the planet itself. Anthropology essentially is the fundamental question of what is it that makes us human. And we can answer that in a lot of very, very different and exciting research ways, and just in our own relationships. You could look at the biology of human existence. You can look at the culture. You can look at the language. You can look at the artifacts that we've been leaving behind, the archaeology, the stuff that we throw away for thousands upon thousands of years. And then also the other evidence, and that's just focusing on our common humanity. You know, if we widen the scale, we can be looking at all aspects of life. Certainly, everybody loves a good dinosaur story. You know, we have paleontology for that and paleobotany. And we can go back and further where you find that the anthropologists are working with astrobiologists, because if natural selection works on this planet, the assumption is, as in any good law, like Newton's law, is that Darwin's work will show up in other places in the universe because it's a law of nature. And so it goes on and on and on. There's never an end to anthropology, nor is there an end, because there's not an end to human inquisitiveness. And I think anthropologists in particular are really, really curious people. I think that's what makes anthropology so special to me, is that there's never a period at the end of the sentence. Just like with all the skulls that you see here, you know, you're never quite done finding the next big thing, or even the next small thing, which fills in a gap that gives us a better understanding of not only who we are as a species, but how we relate to the world. So that to me is anthropology.
Interesting. That would make me a humanist, actually.
Yeah.
Evolution.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Right.
you know, I have to say that I don't know if I found anthropology or if anthropology found me, to be perfectly honest, because I've been, I guess you could say, a non-believer in the most widest terms possible since about 8 years old. And Vincent, you and I were talking before the program in my own research in Godless Grace. One of the things that we found, both my co-author and I, is that really people come to atheism, humanism, skepticism, whatever, 2 different tracks, really. The first is that you really never had a faith tradition, or it was never really deeply important in your life. And secondly, you were ensconced in it, and it so messed you up, or you felt so uncomfortable in it that you had to escape it. And a lot of the people in the first book, Godless Grace, is essentially an ethnography of people who are non-believers who are working for social justice, LGBTQ, human rights, environmental justice, not for the sake of pleasing a father figure or an outside source or anything like that, but to sort of make the world better for us now. And no one had really done a deep ethnography of people and what their motivations were. And we found that, and I know we've probably already gotten off topic, but that, one of the interesting things is that for most people who are activists, and maybe you find this in yourself and maybe people in your audience will feel this way, is that time is of the essence. If you feel or you accept that this is your only time around and that this is your chance to make it better for yourself or those you care about, whatever, or those you'll never meet now and in the future, that this is the time to do it. And that is one of the core motivations, because it's like, if not me, not in an egotistical way, but like, if I don't do this now, I won't get a second chance. And that's what motivates a lot of people. And that's what we found with the first book. The second book, Darwin's Apostles, is basically a history of science. That book really looks at Darwin's life and times and how the struggle continues, because, people are trying to push teaching creationism all the time. It shows up in bills that try to get passed into educational policy in a lot of different states, and it's not just the Bible Belt; it happens everywhere. And so that book is really about Darwin, and Darwin was a fantastically interesting figure too, because he never, it took him 20-something years to write The Origin of Species, and even that was a catalyst because Wallace sent Darwin a 20-page letter outlining natural selection through Alfred Russel Wallace, his research in South America, and that got Darwin, smacking his head, saying, "Here's this kid who, because he was like 10 years his junior, writing in 20 pages what I've spent the last 20 years writing a 400-page book about." And then, of course, they eventually jointly published a paper on natural selection in 1858 with, I believe it was the Linnaean Society. But Darwin was an incredibly shy man, and he always had bouts of illness, whether it was psychosomatic or whether it was real. But he never debated his work. He had other people do that on his behalf, and he didn't ask. People just did it. So people like Joseph Hooker, T.H. Huxley, Alfred Russel Wallace, Asa Gray, who's an American, and Draper also. So those are the 5 people who we highlight in that book. The last book is a children's book on human evolution. So it has, it's a great book for, Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, for those of you, or just because you want to buy it for someone who you love. It's got puzzles and games in it, and gives you a nice visual look. So if you have a youngster who's kindergarten through 5th grade, perfect book for them.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. We're going to recommend it for kids, probably, to let them understand about evolution.
Sure.
Yeah, rather than other different stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is primatology?
Okay. So that's my... primatology is, if you open up a file drawer that is anthropology, one of the files in it is primatology. And primatology is basically the study of primate behavior and ecology and how those two are linked. And typically it's non-human primate. So that's chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, old world and new world monkeys, and so on and so forth. And so that was sort of my training. I did work as an undergraduate at the Bronx Zoo, working on maladaptive eating behavior, which, because these animals, as you can imagine, are sentient creatures, and have personalities and joys and loves, and they get pissed off at people and all these things, but they also get really, really bored. So if they're not challenged, like if they're in their natural environment, they, of course, would have an ecology that would keep them occupied like any natural ecology. But when you're stuck in an enclosure, it's sort of like how 2020 to 2022 with the pandemic was for us humans. I mean, how we were stuck in our enclosures and a lot of us went a little bit, batshit crazy. Well, think about that if you're a chimpanzee or a gorilla or an orangutan and you're in an enclosure. If you don't have any inputs, you can go a little nuts too. And so you start to see weird behaviors like related to eating that you wouldn't see in the wild and stuff like that. And so that's one of the reasons why most modern zoos today look more like natural environments as best that they can than the typical 19th century, here's some bars and look at this thing, So that's primatology. And I got into primatology. First I was like, okay, what did it was Planet of the Apes, 1968. I fell in love with probably anthropology. I was 6 years old, and it just had this. So Rod Sterling, I thank you very much for writing the script for that. That book got me curious about non-human primates, and since I wasn't religious to begin with, I didn't have to fall back on Noah's Ark. And so the first thing I did was I picked up George B. Schaller, who you don't really hear about much. I believe he's still alive. I think he's almost 100 now, who worked with gorillas in Africa. This is before the late Diane Fossey did that under the auspices of Louis Leakey. Louis Leakey sent 3 young women into the wilds, one into Borneo and Sumatra. That's Barut Bindamura, who worked with orangutan. Jane Goodall, of course, who's the most famous. Yeah. Who worked in Gombe with chimpanzees, and then Diane Fossey, who worked with gorillas. And so, I read all of their work, and I was consumed by it. And, this little kid from Brooklyn growing up in the Marlborough houses, nowhere near nature or the world, what was my passport was reading. What was my passport was getting involved. Science was my passport, because I'm this little schnook who's growing up in a really small apartment in Brooklyn, whose parents are, barely getting by themselves. And my first passport was reading. That's what really did it. Yeah. So that's primate behavior. And of course, you see in primates all the things that we sort of see in humans, especially from an evolutionary aspect. Things like love, things like war, things, so the question always comes up, are we built this way? Whatever we want to say to, whether it's war, whether it's love, whether it's monogamy, whether it's polyandry, whatever it is, is there an evolutionary significance? Well, can we look at non-human primates and see any similarities? We're only 2 chromosomes short of chimpanzees, and we are primates. We might be wearing, sneakers and riding the subway, but if you ever read people like Desmond Morris, who is basically, our primate ancestry is right underneath the surface. Just ask anybody who's been affected by road rage and things like that. It's so, you're in enclosed spaces and everything. It really does come out.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing
Sure.
this. We have a list of questions, and there's a lot to talk about. How did you choose to study anthropology?
Okay. Well, again, I think I sort of answered that. But basically, I always felt, even growing up in the heart of Bensonhurst, that the world was a bigger place. It was maybe just my predisposition. I mean, no one ever told me this. Certainly I didn't learn this from any, holy person or anything like that. My parents were very, very secular, although they were believers, and they took pride in education, but they never focused me on anything. So it was really almost a self-determination, in a way, how I wound up in anthropology. I think that I've always been curious about why people are the way they are. And so, if you're a cultural anthropologist, you look at it through maybe the things that we have around us, the choices that we make based on the cultural stresses that we have. Why do we take jobs the way we do? What does our culture say about who we ought to be when we grow up, whether it's gender related or economically related, stratification, whatever. If you're looking at it from a linguistic point of view, it's how does language shape our meaning? How does it shape our identity? How does it shape the way we talk to each other? For me, it was always because it was an interest in chimpanzees and gorillas and things like that, more of the what was then called physical anthropology, which is now called biological anthropology, which includes primatology. And so when I could put words to, this is the thing that fascinates me, I knew from a very early age that this is what I wanted to study. I'll never forget my parents, who were lovely people. They were like, no. When you go to college, you want to get a good job, so be an accountant. Go into finance, because for them, they were depressionary babies who didn't even finish high school, they wanted their only son to make it in business and stuff like that. But, this is not a brain for business. And so to honor them, I started out my academic career as an accounting major. And that lasted all of 2 weeks. Because I realized that not only is that, and I'm not, thank God and I'm an atheist, I can say this, thank God there are accountants in the world because they've saved my ass once in a while. I'm not poo-pooing on anybody who goes into finance or any career or anything, but it wasn't for me. And so 2 weeks after starting college, I moved out of accountancy, which, by the way, accountancy is much better off with me not being in it.
No.
Trust me. And that's when I declared myself an anthropology major, and I haven't looked back since. I've been very fortunate in my career to be able to work with wonderful people, to take students to the Galapagos Islands and walk in Darwin's footsteps. We've gone to Ecuador. We've gone, to see where Darwin did his research at the Darwin Research Centers. Actually, did some really good science, ecological work there. And so, at this point in my career, as I get closer to being an emeritus professor, because I'm close to, cutting that cord in a year or so, I'm in the legacy mode of my academic career, which is really giving back as much as I can, making sure that students have what they need, and trying to give them the best experience possible. If they want to study anthropology, I'm their guy to go to. And any of your listeners, if you ever want to reach out to me, please go ahead and do so, because anthropology and I have been friends for 50 years, and it's the best relationship I've ever had with anything.
Lovely. That's so lovely. We're going to put your email if you don't mind.
Yeah, no.
And if anyone would like to reach you.
Yeah, my Medgar email, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
The next question is, what is the difference between Homo sapien and Homo neanderthal and Homo erectus?
Oh my goodness. Well, there's a lot of differences, you know. Yeah.
We have
for
all
those
this
of you
here.
who are interested, So Neanderthals and Homo sapien Neanderthals, because they are a cousin of ours who have gone extinct. When I was in college a billion years ago, the only other species that people really talked about were these quote unquote brutish Neanderthals who were living and went extinct before anatomically modern humans basically took over the world. And of course, now we find that there's a lot of nuance, and Neanderthals were not brutish. And yes, they did die out about 50,000 years ago. But as Darwin has shown through the idea of having this glorious tree and connection of species that adapt or speciate or go extinct, is that it's not just Neanderthals. We've found multiple species that lived up to and to maybe about 35,000 years ago, including, this little guy right here, who's, the hobbits, the Homo florensis, living in Asia. So these are competing, species that were around in the blink of an eye in terms of evolution. This doesn't even include the Denisovans and Homo longi and a few other hominids that died out. We are the last Homo standing, meaning Homo sapien sapien.
Homo sapien sapien.
Right. So we show up in the scene anywhere from about 300,000 years ago to about, there's a new find that says maybe 700,000 years ago, first evidence of truly archaic, anatomically modern humans. But definitely in Morocco, there's finds that say we're around 350,000 years. So we're an African primate. At the same time, of course, you have this is Neanderthal, and one of the major starkly different things between anatomically modern humans and Neanderthals is that these are cold. The Pleistocene is a much colder time; it warmed up. These are bigger boned species that do much better in cold than we do. Although we had culture, they had skins, they had fire, they had tools, all of those things. Probably the starkest difference between anatomically modern humans and Neanderthals is the area of the frontal lobe. If you notice how on a typical modern human, it doesn't slope back that much. With Neanderthal, it does. So you can almost say, if you're psychology minded, that this frontal lobe here is what uniquely makes us human. That gives us everything from this ability to do a podcast, to data centers, to writing, to complex language, to being able to go to the moon, simply because of the morphology of our brain.
Yeah.
Okay. So the question is, did we outcompete all these other species, later species? Absolutely. Did we do it because we were all sharing genes, so we're all fucking, in the Pleistocene? Maybe, because we all have some Neanderthal DNA in us, right? Unless you're from Africa, the chances are, if you're from Asia or Europe, you have anywhere between 2 and 4% of Neanderthal DNA. So we clearly outcompeted, but we also intermingled. And you see that deeper and deeper into the fossil record, where things like the Denisovans, they have everybody in them. They were having parties. This was the Studio 54 of evolution, because you've got Neanderthal, you've got Homo erectus, you got Homo heidelbergensis, you've got all of these different genes and in all these different species. So we are kissing cousins more than just cousins, but we are also uniquely human. and it is the value of that. So there's a tremendous amount of diversity in terms of skin color, eye color, height, hair texture, all of those different things. But all of that only happens because we as an African primate left Africa somewhere about 90,000 years ago. In fact, we looked more like your skin tone than my skin tone. Lighter skin tone only came much later in our evolution. So for any of the racists out there who think that pale skin is some type of model that everyone should have, the reality is that comes, light skin and blue eyes comes very late into the game of what we call human evolution and humanity.
Yeah. We would like to know more about white skin and other skin,
Right.
and how they develop, if that's good, because a lot of people would like to know.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, obviously, if you look at the populations that are in Africa, not everybody in Africa is, Egypt is in Africa, right? So, and South Africa is in Africa. And so you have a lot of diversification and diversity, which is really, really good. But dark skin, because of the temperatures, right? Because all of the melanin in your skin is a reaction to how much direct sunlight you're getting, right? So colder climates, you get less sun, your skin gets lighter.
Right.
Okay, so hotter climates, more intense heat, the skin reaction is to get darker. And everything in between. That's why some places in India you'll see people who are as dark as people, so they'll have features that look Caucasian, straight hair,
Same face,
same
structure.
right, but
Yeah.
really, really deep dark skin.
Right.
Again, that is all a reaction to the environment. We are a reaction to the environment. I mean, we are one species.
Yeah.
With a tremendous amount of diversity. And you know what? The beautiful thing is if we didn't have this diversity, if something should happen to our planet, if we were all looked one particular way and acted one particular way, we would probably go extinct really, really fast. And that might have been one of the things that, caused Neanderthals to go out. They could not adapt fast enough because they were so isolated, aside from the fact that they were being out-predated by anatomically modern humans and things like that. So think about that. Diversity, cultural, organic, genetic diversity is a massive plus, which keeps us going. It doesn't guarantee that we'll continue, but it means that because we have such genetic distance, even though it's only about 1 or 1.5% all of the diversity, it's enough to give us enough opportunity to, if the world does change more and more dramatically, continue to adapt. All species that have ever existed on the planet, us, everyone who's no longer here, right? 3 options, okay? You either adapt, you speciate. In other words, you adapt, you change over time. The species is the species, but it stays the species, but it may get bigger, it might get smaller, it might change its color, might grow another tail, might grow another eye, but it's the same species. Speciate, meaning that you go from one species and you give rise to 2 species. Like, for instance, Homo heidelbergensis is probably the ancestor to Neanderthals and anatomically modern humans. Or it could be Homo erectus is, getting back to your question, is the ancestor to Neanderthals. And right, so we have a question here. Where does Homo heidelbergensis sit within the evolutionary tree? Right? Because for years it was like, Homo erectus gave rise to Neanderthals and anatomically humans. But now, of course, you have this find, and the question is, well, what about this? So that's speciation. One species gives rise to multiple species. Like, for instance, Darwin's finches. right? The whole idea is that one root ancestor gives rise, based on the environment, to a whole bunch of different species. And a species defined as being able to breed and have successful offspring that themselves can breed and so on and so forth, right? And then the third option, which is never really a good option, is extinction. Okay? Which is everybody here you see on the table except us, right? So it's speciation, it's adaptation, or it's extinction. I don't care if it's a hominid or a hominin. I don't care if it's a plant. I don't care if it's a fish. Anything that has ever existed, to the smallest amoeba, those are the options. And that's all of life on the planet, and probably all of life on every planet. Those three mechanisms. I mean, you can think about things like what's called gene flow and genetic drift, and how much the alleles change within a population, or stuff like that. And those are part of the mechanisms of that. But it's really three things. It's adaptation, it's speciation, or it's extinction.
Interesting, really interesting thing to hear and understand more about evolution.
Sure.
And about yourself too as well, where you came from, and your ancestors also.
Sure.
You mentioned that we have two Homo erectus, one from Asia and one from Africa, right?
Right.
Tell us more about those.
Okay. Well, this is Homo ergaster. Okay. And the reason why people in the field say that Homo erectus is responsible for anatomically modern humans, or archaic humans, that there was a speciation, and there are no Neanderthals in Africa, so they had to get there somewhere. And now Homo erectus was the first hominid species to leave Africa and populate a big chunk of the world. You find Homo erectus in Asia.
Yeah.
You have Homo erectus in Europe. And so Homo erectus led to Neanderthals in Europe. Homo erectus was probably, although there is controversy in the sense that there might be an alternative, the linked four species for us as well. Okay. Now this is Homo erectus. This is let me see, I think this is the Asian Homo erectus here. This is the European Homo erectus. Homo erectus was a very sophisticated species. They had fire. They had complex schools. Brains that were maybe about, 970 to 1100 to 1200 cc's. Our brains were about 1400. Right?
Big difference.
Okay, so they bigger brains, not
Bigger
like
brain.
someone like this who's Homo habilis. I'm sorry, yeah. Okay, so here's Homo habilis, handyman, which is the first archaic species listed within the genus Homo, just like Homo sapiens, Homo sapien Neanderthal, Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, and so on and so forth, right? So we don't know if Homo habilis, at least I don't believe there's tools. The earliest tools are associated with Homo habilis and very late Australopithecines. So if you look at late Australopithecines, right, like here's Africanus, right, you can see a lot of functional similarity.
Yeah.
Even though this is slightly bigger brains, right? Now, the question is, who was the root ancestor of not just humans, right, which was probably Homo erectus or Homo heidelbergensis, but who's the ancestor of the genus Homo, right? Going back even further, because we got Homo habilis, who then evolves or speciates into potentially Homo genesis or Homo erectus. Okay, so then we have to start looking at, you keep going back in the story, and it gets much more complicated. And it used to be, because evolution has never been a straight line. Okay, but it gets messier and messier with more of the finds that are made. And now you're finding, a potential, when the Morocco find was done some years ago, which pushed back anatomically modern humans, archaic humans, to 350,000 years ago. It was like, wow, that's a big jump. And now a paper just came out, and I was actually privy to see the fossil evidence of this jaw that has archaic human and other species in it, but it's clearly human, and it's dated to about 700,000 years ago. So now we keep pushing back.
Oh, my.
Yeah, now we keep pushing back. When did humans first, especially archaic humans, first show up? And what was their genetic mix, and who was mixing inside of them, and so on and so forth. So you might be Homo habilis, but you might also have some Australopithecine thrown in there for good measure as well. And so it gets more and more complicated as the story, maybe complicated is the wrong word, it gets richer. The story of our common evolution becomes richer as more finds were made. And by the way, we're not talking about tremendous amounts of evidence here. For later fossils, yes. But, something, some of these, like for common humans or anything that might be archaic human, you got a lot of fossil evidence. But even for like Homo erectus or the Australopithecines, you're talking about a few dozen fossils. Of all the evidence that's out there, it's maybe 1% of whatever could possibly be fossilized. So when the question is, why are there gaps? Well, it's because not everything gets fossilized. So it's hard to say. And so there might always be some gaps. There might always be some controversy or some theory, competing theories, because we don't have, and that's the beautiful thing about anthropology, especially the biological anthropology, is that you're looking at the evidence, right?
Yeah.
You're looking at it from phylogenics, you're looking at it from chemistry, geology, artifacts, the tangible stuff. It's not I think or I believe, it's I conclude. Belief, anybody can believe anything.
Right.
Right? A conclusion is based on evidence. And so when people say, oh, do you believe in God? I say, I don't believe in God. I conclude that there is no evidence for God. That's what I tell people.
Interesting and strong.
Because I never
point.
say I don't believe in God. I say I conclude that there is no evidence for God.
Understandable.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And also that you mentioned that they were practicing spirituality, Neanderthal and Homo erectus. Probably, how did they practice spirituality? That's probably spirituality is a very important thing that they do practice for their own surviving mechanism.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm not sure, that, we've probably anatomically modern humans have been burying their dead since at least 90,000 years ago. And we know this because we have evidence, we find evidence. So there is a question about where do we go after all of this ends that is being asked philosophically for as long as humans have been humans. Ironically, you also find that there's evidence that Neanderthal buried their dead too, or they put them in certain cave areas for certain reasons and adorned them with certain poppies and flowers, and so on and so forth. And so, now we could assume that that means that they had a view of the afterlife, maybe, or maybe it was an honorific thing. That is, this person had some level of status within the group, and so when they passed away, they gave them these things, right? Because what for those of us, for those cultures and these species, the idea of burying someone, right, like putting pennies on the eyes and going over the river Styx, so you had to pay the ferryman. This idea of your soul having to do something in the next realm is much older than even recorded history, because we have the evidence of in Africa of a child being buried by anatomically modern humans at least 90,000 years ago, and you have Neanderthal, at least one aspect, and I believe there are others, of other Neanderthals being buried too. Now again, we can call that spirituality. Maybe it's not the same spirituality that we view today, but it means that at least they were questioning, is this the only plane of existence?
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily probably like organized religion, but it definitely was, is this all there is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for this sharing.
Sure.
I have another question. Like every time you talk about something, there's other questions that pop in my head about evolution.
Yeah.
What's make, like from Homo erectus, let's say, to Homo Neanderthal, and which their brain and frontal lobe probably keep developing over and over until we become Homo sapien and modern Homo sapien.
Right.
What keep that motivation of developing?
Well, it's not a motivation because there's not a consciousness to it. Okay, it is essentially, if you're following Darwinian natural selection, is that we're looking at random mutation. And this mutation fit an environment where those genes were favorable, not in a way like, oh, we're conscious of it. Look, you got a bigger brain. Hey, let's keep making bigger brain babies. It's that this mutation for a larger frontal lobe for our species happened, and then it gets passed down to different generations. It's not like there was once this famous scientist named Lamarck, who had this idea that the reason why giraffes have such long necks is because they wanted to get to the top of the trees to eat, and so they kept consciously pushing their heads and then pushing that will to their babies to do that. But evolution is not a conscious operation. What it is that longer necked giraffes were able to reach better and better food sources higher and up. And so if you had a longer necked giraffe and that giraffe bred, they were going to have longer necked babies and so on and so forth. So that, because they're in their environment, is going to make them reach the treetops. So it's not a conscious operation, nor is it, the watchmaker, the whole idea of William Paley and the watchmaker, that there has to be a designer. The scariest thing for people who accept, God did it, whether it be evangelicals or whatever, or, is the idea that this thing called natural selection is unconscious and random. And that's what it is.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Vincent would like to ask Professor David here a question about anthropology.
Actually, more about humanism.
Okay.
And, how your lack of belief and your, coalescing of your values around humanist values. I'm curious about, well, how that went for you, also how it was related to your work. I mean, you said something earlier about that, about them all being related, and maybe just expand a bit on that. I find that fascinating.
Sure.
It's almost like your spirituality, quote unquote, is here in this work.
I am the first to admit that I am a very spiritual person. You know, I mean, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I mean, I think you can look up at the stars and be in awe of the fact that, you know, it took 13.5 billion years for all of this to exist, 4.5 billion years for the Earth to exist, 1 billion years for the Earth to cool down, for there to be oxygen and abiogenesis so it took 1 billion years after that, and then we're off to the races with the first forms of life and speed through, and here we are, right? So we are the outcome of this, as Carl Sagan, who's my favorite one of my favorite people in the world, would say, we are made of star stuff.
Star stuff, yeah.
Carbon-based life forms, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that democracy, a healthy view of science are interlinked. That you really can't have, and humanism, all three of them are tightly, almost three strands of a form of DNA. Is that if you have those three, you have to be as open as possible, because if you have a scientific worldview, that's going to mean that you're a materialist in nature. If you're a humanist, it means that you're probably ethically and morally, or at least ethically, founded on wanting to see the world as it is, as a better place for everyone. And democracy, because it seems like democracy really is the thing that fosters the things that allow science and empathy to grow out of all of the political systems. I could be wrong, and your audience will probably disagree with me, and that's okay. But it's those three things that sort of almost, like I say, when I say that I didn't choose anthropology, anthropology chose me.
Chose you, yeah.
It's because of that's the way my brain is weirdly wired. And so fast forward, I'm almost at the sunset of my academic career. I still write. I'm still on the board of the American Humanist Association, and they're doing just super wonderful work politically, as well as working with a tremendous amount of groups, including hopefully the Humanist Foundation soon, one day soon, sooner than we can, maybe before we even leave here, you know. Yeah. But those are the sort of the ties that bind, that sort of give me my worldview. Yeah. And it is the absence of faith, religious faith, not faith in humanity, not faith in myself, but the idea of theological faith.
I would quibble and say that I don't have faith in myself. I don't have faith in anything. I have confidence in things based on conclusions. Right. I like that. You're
right. Yes, it's like I said
earlier.
I don't believe. I
you conclude.
Exactly.
Yes, I'm actually going to use that one.
By all means.
For sure.
Yeah.
And we only have a few minutes left.
Okay.
I, for example, think that my lack of belief in anything supernatural was genetic.
Okay.
I think this because, according to my mother, I was a teeny little atheist running around, not believing in God, and learning quickly that the grown-ups didn't like a lot of questions.
You went to Catholic school, right?
Yeah. Oh no, that
must have really went over great on Sundays.
No, actually, because I learned very quickly by the time I got into grammar school not to ask the grown-ups questions and just kind of keep my own counsel about all this stuff.
So you weren't labeled a heretic?
Not at all. Not at all. I am alive today because of protective coloration.
Okay.
Yeah, because of camouflage. And that is the direct
Adaptation.
result of, thank you, cultural evolution right there. And the reason I say that I think that it's, certainly in my case, genetic is because I can't give myself the credit of having arrived at this, in stages, once I had achieved the age of reason and then, started reading Socrates.
Right.
This is just out of the box, Vincent.
Right.
It's just not buying it.
Yeah, okay.
Just
I believe
not buying it. So if I were to put that down to anything, I would put it down to nature.
Okay. Okay.
For whatever use or interest that's worth, and just
There can be genetic predisposition.
you've got a
for
few
things, yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, American Humanist Association.
Yes.
I met Fish, as I told
Fish
you,
Dark.
at
Yeah.
Fish Dark at the New York Society for Ethical Culture.
Okay.
And his fiance would like.
Oh, they just got married.
they just
I think
get-
like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, congratulations,
Yeah.
Fish, from Humanist Foundation, and would like to have Fish. So the work that he's doing at American Humanist, really interesting thing. And we almost probably end of this podcast. Would you like to give a message to a Humanist Foundation or to the audience, Professor David?
Oh my goodness! Wow. Okay.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. No. I'd say, as we all turn another page, to remain curious, to remain open, to remain humane, and to put empathy first. If you want to change the world, and there are a million ways to do it, start with empathy.
Thank you very much for what you did, and you came. It's a pleasure actually to have you.
Thank you.
In the Humanist Foundation. I would like to thank.
Past my bedtime too.
To have you and the skulls.
Yeah, right. And thank you, Vincent Downing, for being here. And thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you
Yep.
for inviting me, and it has been my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah.
And that's it.